Welcome to Just Saying, a podcast produced by and recorded at Tri-State Worship Center. Now here are your hosts, Allison Gardner and Pastor Terry Wagner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of Just Saying. My name's Allison Gardner, and I'm here with Pastor Terry Wagner.
Hello, Allison Gardner. How are you?
Good.
How was vacation?
It was great.
Good.
Not ready to go back to work though.
You're not?
Nope.
Well, you're going to have to.
I know, I'm going to have to. We also have Tyler Staten here with us.
Those are the joys of being an adult.
Yeah.
Work.
And I'm really excited about today's episode because we are going to talk about dating. Ooh. Dun, dun, dun.
That was pretty good. That was totally unplanned,
that was,
too. Totally unplanned.
Yeah, I could hear the harmony.
We have to do our own music. Yeah.
Right. Low budget.
This is a B podcast.
Sorry.
All right. So, our first question today to open up the discussion is, should teenagers date?
Well, I think that the first thing we have to do is restate our mission statement of this podcast, which is that we want to view current issues, life issues, through the lens of the Bible, right? So, all of the answers or all the responses that I will have, I need to make sure that people understand that they're coming from my understanding of the Bible. And so to say, should they date, I think we have to define what that means. What does it mean to date someone? If you just look it up in the dictionary, it's just to go out with someone. But there is a second part to the definition that says someone in whom one is romantically interested. So I think we would have to start with, what is a date? I mean, I think there are times when a bunch of people, young people or adults, get together and they go out for dinner, go to a movie, whatever. They're just going out to have fun, relax, enjoy the company of each other. And I think, obviously, that's a good thing. But then if you move into the realm of, okay, I want to go out with someone because I am romantically interested in them, I think that brings us to, what the topic of what you want to talk about, which is, if I'm consistent and I want to hold on to my Christian convictions, then I would have to ask the question, if I want to date somebody, why do I want to date them? And if the answer to that question is because I think I might be romantically interested in them, then I think it needs to be somebody that you think you can spend the rest of your life with. I know that sounds old, and I get that. But 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 21-22, it says, if you keep yourself pure, you will be a special utensil for honorable use in the Lord's hand, of course. Your life will be clean. Be ready for the Master to use you for every good work. Run from anything that stimulates youthful lusts. Instead, pursue righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. Enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with a pure heart. So, it's a long answer to a short question. I think first you've got to decide, what is this date? Is this just a bunch of people going out just to have some fun and relax and do some recreation, whatever the case might be? Or is this somebody that I feel like I might be romantically interested in? If that's the case, that date or that dating, I think needs to be looked at through the lens of Scripture, and that person needs to be someone that you might be able to spend the rest of your life with.
Right. So that kind of leads us into the second question. Should you ever date someone without the intention of marrying them?
Let me ask you that question. I would be interested in you. I have a response, but what do you think?
In my opinion, as Christians, I don't think that we should because, I feel like it's just a waste of time. It's like there's no point in it. If you are romantically interested in someone that you don't see yourself having a future with, then why would you pursue a relationship that you know is going to end in failure?
Agreed.
In my opinion.
Tyler? What do you think?
You and I think a lot alike when we look at things, and from a literal standpoint. Like the first thing I did was Google the definition of date. What does it mean? And it says a social or romantic appointment or engagement. So I think one thing when you're dating, and air quotes there, is to kind of, from the very beginning, let's talk about what it is and what it isn't. Mm-hmm. Are we just going to go somewhere and have dinner, no expectations of anything growing further than that, or is this somebody that I am interested in a potentially romantic way, mm-hmm. and this is going to help me see if it will be a good fit. Does that make sense?
Right, mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's important to establish what it is and what it isn't before you ever do it.
Right.
Because you don't want to lead somebody on, and you don't want to, create an uncomfortable mm-hmm. atmosphere where maybe you're not interested, but you like them as a friend and that kind of thing. Because, and that's more from the literal standpoint. But I do think that I agree with what you're saying there. If you have no romantic interest and you know it's not somebody that you could see yourself marrying, then yeah, don't waste your time.
Right.
Or their time.
Or their time, yeah.
Yeah.
And in the context of our world today, I know that sounds old, but really, there's some things that are ageless, that are timeless. There are some convictions that we should hold on to that don't have an expiration date on them. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons why that our world is run into some of the trouble that we're in is because we leave some of those convictions rather than bring them along with us. And I think this is one of them. I think, yes, if you are interested in someone romantically dating, it needs to be someone that you can spend the rest of your life with. And if not, then I don't know the purpose of that date other than to, the potential of introducing some kind of a false pretense mm-hmm. into it, which then leads to, more problems that I'm sure we'll talk about here in a minute. But I guess the answer is, date someone that you think you can spend the rest of your life with. And if not, I don't have a problem with a group of people going out and just having some fun, going out for dinner, whatever, but it's the intent. I guess that's the word. It's the intent. What's the intent of the date? Right.
And I think that, as Christians, like, this life is something that we have to take super seriously because we don't have a lot of time here, and we have a really serious mission to accomplish, and, why waste time?
And I don't want anybody to get the impression that we are, as believers, we're some kind of killjoy. Right. That we don't want you to have fun. That's not it at all.
Right.
We want you to have fun. As a matter of fact, God created relationships to fulfill parts of us that need to be fulfilled. And I don't want to get ahead of where we're going, but, to hear someone say, listen, don't go out with someone unless you intend that person to be someone you spend the rest of your life with, and you're like, you just don't want me to have no fun.
Right.
You're like, no, not at all.
Well, that's why it's important to set those boundaries and the expectations from the bat, so that right off the bat, so you don't run in or find yourself in that situation.
Yeah. All right. So our next question is, what is the biggest mistake teenagers make when it comes to dating?
Okay, so we have qualified what we're talking about. We're not talking about just some people going out to have fun and have dinner or whatever. We're talking about romantic dating. Mm-hmm. And what is the biggest mistake that people make, not just teenagers, but adults as well. And it's two words: no plan. No plan. When we just go out happenstance, there's an old saying, and I will date it. It's an old saying that if you fail to plan, you can plan to fail. So you have to have a plan. I think the worst thing to have happen is for some young man to call a young lady and say, hey, let's go out Friday night. And she says, okay. And she says, what time will you pick me up? He said, I thought about 7. And then he picks her up and it's like, what are we going to do? And it's like, I don't know. And that I don't know leads to trouble.
Right.
Have a plan. I'll pick you up at 7. We're going to go eat at wherever. After that, we can take in a movie, and then I will do my best to have you home by whatever. And again, that sounds old. That sounds fogey. But the truth of the matter is
But
that
it's also gentlemanly and
Absolutely.
respectful.
Right.
and it's not chauvinistic to be gentlemanly. I know some people get upset nowadays if you open the door for a lady. They get upset. But no, that is proper. That's right. That's what you do. So I know that we could talk about it for a long, long, long time. But I just think the simple answer is there's just no plan. The best thing you can do is have a plan when you go out, and then work the plan, whatever that is. And if you do that, you can avoid a lot of awkwardness. You can avoid a lot of tension, avoid a lot of anxiety. Just have a plan. What are you going to do?
It's all about intentions.
Come on, preach.
All right. So, what does a relationship centered around Christ look like in the context of dating?
Well, let's see. Let me use a phrase you used in episode 1. WWJD. I mean, if we're Christians, which you guys have been around me a lot, I struggle using that word because I don't think a lot of people understand the real ramifications of
Right.
saying I am a Christian.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm a Christian, then I am a Christ follower. If I'm a Christian, I am a model, a small imitation of the real thing. So I should do what he does. Now, as far as we know, Jesus didn't date anybody.
Yeah.
He may have.
Maybe.
We don't know. It just didn't get recorded if he did.
Right.
And so to answer the question, how should a Christian do it? Well, what would Jesus do? If we're supposed to be Christians, we're Christ-like, we should do what Jesus did, but he didn't really leave us an example. So I think what we have to do then is take into consideration who we are as believers to answer that question. How should we do that? Well, we should do it with the same characteristics, the same convictions as a Christian. And it's so hard for me sometimes because I know I'm an old person. For those of you that don't know, I'm 60 years old, and I've been married for 41 years. And I'm sorry I'm rustling papers, but I'm trying to find something here. And I just feel like that we need to reflect a Christian culture. Seems to be a buzzword today. A Christian culture. And make it look like Jesus. And I don't think that can happen accidentally. I don't think it happens by happenstance. I think we have to have intent and purpose in doing that. So, I don't know how well that answers that question, but I think that I think we have to just reflect Christ in all that we do, and that's not just dating. That's on the job. That's at home with your parents, whatever the case might be. So.
Right. All right. So, what are some boundaries that should be put into place?
Well, I think it's a great question because it goes back to the previous question, and that is, it's a big mistake not to have boundaries, not to have a plan, not to say this is what we're going to do, and what are some of those boundaries. I don't know if there's a blanket answer for that question. I think that it really depends more on an individual, and here's where we get into some theological hair splitting that, some people who want to date are more mature in their Christian walk than others. I mean, if you got somebody who just committed their life to the Lord last month,
Yeah.
and they want to go out with somebody, that's a different ball game
Yeah.
than someone who's been,
Right.
well, like you, Allison. I mean, you're 17, single. Is that right?
Yes.
Allison.com. Just
Oh
know
my
that.
goodness.
But it would be different because you're raised with a Christian ethic
Right,
in you. That's
right.
part of your fiber.
Yeah.
And so those boundaries for you
Are different.
would look different
Yeah.
than boundaries for.
And I think that is, I would even go towards saying that if a mature, quote unquote, mature believer, someone who's been a believer for a good amount of time, starts to date someone that is a new believer, that is a baby, in the faith, I think that can be an unequally yoked relationship as well as a non-believer and a Christian dating.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
that's a big concern. I had a friend of mine who, he's really serious about his faith and he wants to be a pastor one day. And he started dating a girl that became a Christian just a couple months before. And I was trying to find the best way to just be like, listen, you got to be careful. She's new in her faith, and I don't know if a relationship is something that she should just jump into. It's gonna be different.
Yeah, and I think that you hit it on the head. I mean that person that has that the longer relationship, I will say, with Christ, that has kind of grown in the faith. There's some things that's going to be obvious to them that's not so obvious to the person
Right.
that's younger in the faith. And let me throw this out, and I feel like it fits, but maybe I don't know if it does or not. I think we live with three levels of morality, I guess is what I would say. And hear me out before you pass judgment on me. I think number one, we have convictions. I have some convictions that I will die for.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jesus Christ is the only Son of God, and if someone came to me and said, deny Christ or die, I'm dying, because I will die for some convictions. Then I have some beliefs. We're a Pentecostal church. We believe in all the works of the Spirit, but I'm not going to die for that.
Right.
I'll fight you for it, but I'm not going to die for it. Then there's opinions. And opinion is neither conviction nor belief. It's just an opinion. But the problem is when I take my opinion and put it in place of a conviction. And now all of a sudden I'm going to die for an opinion. And I think a lot of that kind of thinking has just permeated society. And it's no longer about a conviction that's based on like the Word of God or the example of Christ. It's really about just my opinion, what I think and how I think it ought to be. And the truth of the matter is, whenever we're left to our own to decide right, wrong, good, bad, chaos soon is the result, and anarchy is knocking at the door. And so I think when we talk about dating, I think part of the issue and part of the challenge for today is to somehow get back to a standard, get back to some kind of a conviction, and not just an opinion about, well, I think it ought to be this or I think it ought to be that. And I think the best standard, the best plumb line that we have is the Word of God. I mean, what does the Bible say about relationships and dating and intimacy and marriage and all these things that really are the result of dating? So, I think that we have to understand that those boundaries have to be there, and I think boundaries are part of that plan. Boundaries are part of that thing saying, okay, we're going to go out on Friday night, and this is what we're going to do, and here's the boundaries. I know some, this may be going too far for some people, but I know young people that have entered into the dating world that will just tell the person they're going out with right up front, listen, we're not holding hands. We're not, there's no kissing involved. And I get that because some people can't handle that.
Right.
Just can't. And again, it might go
Right.
back to the mature versus not so mature. I don't know that it lands in that arena, but it could be. But here's the thing. Of all the sin, and I'm jumping questions now, Allison, I'm sorry, but
okay.
of all the sin in the Bible, we're told to fight.
Right.
Fight this and fight that and
Right.
fight this. Whereas one sin we're told to run away from.
Sexual
And
temptation.
sexual sin, yeah. You got to run. So some people, their conviction is, I'm not going to hold hands. I'm not going to kiss. I'm not going to start an engine. That's going to then power me to something that I shouldn't be doing.
Right.
So, I think we have to have some boundaries, and it's not bad. And I'll say this, and then you can respond or move on. Wouldn't it be? It seems to me like it would be almost a relief for, say, the guy that has asked the girl out, and he says, "Here's
Right,
the boundaries."
right.
then there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's no question.
No
now.
question.
There's no
Yeah.
confusion. Yeah.
It's not like, okay, I wonder if I should try to get a kiss at the end of the
Yeah.
night. No, no.
Right.
We said that up front. We've got the boundaries. We've got the plan.
Yeah.
We're going to do it like Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And all these questions that you've already asked, the three you've already asked, I mean, they all really intertwine there on what we need to do. So I think the boundaries are absolutely, positively necessary. And
Yeah.
when Vicki and I started dating, the truth of the matter is Vicki was the good girl and Terry was the bad guy. I mean, I'm just telling you. But when we started dating, there were boundaries set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we adhered to those boundaries, and it just removed the anxiety and the stress and the
Right.
awkwardness
Yeah.
of it all.
I think it's something that should be set at the very beginning, Don't let it simmer. Don't let your heart get involved before you talk about your personal convictions with someone,
Well, let me ask you a question then, and I agree with you 100%. Does that limit the playing field?
Probably. But
And it should.
it should, yeah.
Right.
If you aren't feeling convicted about the same things, then you're probably not on the path. You're not on similar paths in your walk with Christ, I guess
Correct,
I should
yeah.
say. And if you're not going to be on the same path, then you're not going to be able to support each other, encourage each other, understand the struggles, But I have a question for you guys. We talk about physical boundaries. I think that is the most prominent type that we talk about. But is there emotional boundaries that you need to set? Is there,
You might have to unpack it just a little bit for
Yeah.
me. When you say emotional boundaries, what do you?
Is
Yeah.
there parts of your life that you shouldn't talk about or open up about with someone who you're just dating? Is there parts of you that you should reserve for someone that you're married to? Is it just physical boundaries, or does it go deeper than that?
Boy, that's
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought. And for me, I mean, my immediate answer to that is, if you're romantically interested in someone and you're going to begin dating them because you think this is someone you can spend the rest of your life with, full disclosure, I don't think is ever a bad thing.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This might be the kind of past I had or didn't have, or this is this is how I was raised. This is where I went to school. Whatever the case might be, I don't.
For me, I feel like there would have to be some point where I would or wouldn't say I feel safe or comfortable about telling this person this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do it too soon, obviously, because you don't know if you can trust that person with that information,
Right.
and maybe that's a part of you that is very sensitive or otherwise. But and that's not to say that like you said, full disclosure is good, but you don't want to jump the gun.
Right. No. That makes sense.
And share personal things that you don't want other people to know, or because what happens if you tell this person your whole life story, every
Right.
little detail,
Right.
and then it doesn't work out,
And you break up and
then they go and start
yeah,
talking about it to other people.
true.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was an interesting perspective,
That is it's
because
an
we
interesting question,
we
yeah.
never talk about it,
Yeah.
But anyways, moving on.
Moving on.
Why do you think that young people crave relationships so much,
Well, I don't think we can pigeonhole young people to that.
or anyone? Yes, anyone.
I think we were created for relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That's, God created everything, and He said it's good, but then He realized there was something missing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, God said, "Let there be a tree." There was a tree. Simple fact that the tree exists blesses God, but the tree really doesn't have a choice in the matter. And so then God said, "Let us," which again, you can dive into the theology of us being a relationship, Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. There's a relationship there. He said, "Let us make man in our image." And part of that image and part of that likeness is that we're created for relationship. Unlike the tree that doesn't have a choice, we have a choice. And the choice whether to enter into right relationship with God or not. That's why we were created. And then after He creates Adam, he says what? Well, it's not good for man to be alone.
Yeah.
Because God recognizes that relationships are important. So I think it's in our DNA.
Right.
It's in our DNA. Now I know there'll be people that will say, "No, I've never desired to be in a relationship with someone of the opposite sex." But I'm saying that in our creation, in our beginnings, in our Genesis, we were created for relationship, and God said, "It's not good man to be alone. Adam, I'm gonna make you a wife." And Adam's like, "Yeah, that sounds good. I don't know what a wife is, but I want one." Because
Yeah.
he wants to be in a relationship. Right. So I think that all people want to be in a relationship. And then a lot of people think that Solomon may have written most of Ecclesiastes, but I did make note of a verse in chapter 4 of Ecclesiastes that says, "Two are better than one." Mm-hmm. And so there again, I mean, that kind of answers the question. Mm-hmm. That two are better than one because they have good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who's alone when he falls, because he doesn't have another person to lift him up. Mm-hmm. So we were created for relationships, and I think there is that vacuum in us that wants to be reconciled with God and that relationship, but also those horizontal relationships, whether they be family, friends, or in this case, romantic relationships. I think it's just in us. We were created with that in us to find that.
Well, what do you think about Paul's words in about singleness? Singleness being better. Is that what he says? That singleness is better?
Well, I think what he said, and I don't have it in front of me, but thank you for bringing it up. He said, if you can't control yourself,
right,
find somebody to be with.
Right.
But he said, it would be a better thing. And let me ask you this: what would be better about being single? What is better about being single?
I guess just being able to focus everything into your walk with God.
Right. So then, and I agree with you, and I know some people in my life, in my circle of friends that are my age, that are single people, mm-hmm. and never been married, and they feel like that's God's call on their life.
Right.
That's a calling for them. Also, it allows them that freedom to pursue things of God that sometimes, family and relationships would be a hindrance for. Mm-hmm. And so I do think in that essence, it's better just because I think that's a gift. It's a calling of God. But I don't want to pigeonhole that and say, okay, everybody, first thing you need to do is consider being alone.
Right.
Because I don't think that's how God set it up. I think I think the intention there was for us to be in relationship, but then there are those avenues where people have been gifted to travel that road as a single person, and it doesn't make them less than. It doesn't, doesn't make them a bad. Nothing like that. It mm-hmm. just, I think that is a calling of God for that person.
Okay. So how can people who are already in relationships be more intentional about growing their relationship in Christ?
You answered your own question. There's one word in there that really is the answer, and that is intentional. Mm-hmm. There's so many people. I've done marriage counseling for 35 years, hundreds of couples, some in some of the most dire of situations, and some in circumstances that really were not that hard to overcome. But in all of those situations, intentionality is the name of the game. Mm-hmm. They think that it's just going to happen by osmosis or by accident. It's just, hey, we have this problem, we come to talk to you, and suddenly everything's going to be okay. No. You become intentional. And I think it's the same thing with dating. You got to have a plan. Mm-hmm. You got to have boundaries. You got to be able to communicate that to each other. You got to be able to say those things. And I think, going back to a verse that you used earlier, Allison, I forget that we're not being videoed,
right.
And I point to you, but nobody can see me do that. Is that scripture about being unequally yoked? Mm-hmm. I think you have to be intentional about making sure, and I've heard them all, man. I truly have heard them all. People, I really love him, but he's not a Christian. But I know that if we start dating, I can lead him to the Lord.
Right.
And
That's a slippery slope.
oh, it's terrible. It's a terrible evangelistic idea.
Well, and I don't know if I feel like it was you, but maybe it wasn't. Gave an illustration of if I'm standing on a chair.
Oh, I said that one.
Was it you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used that one.
Okay. In
Yeah,
Journey?
In Journey, yeah.
Okay. And it's a lot easier. Well, you know what? I'll just let you say it then.
I don't remember where I heard it from. I think it was another.
Probably
sermon.
from me.
No, it wasn't. But let's say that the person who is a Christian is on a platform and they are higher than the person who is not a Christian. Not saying, holier
Better
than thou,
than
better
or
than
something,
whatever.
right, yeah.
Closer to God, I should say. They're up higher. And the person that they want to date is below them on the floor. It's going to be way easier for the person who's on the floor to pull the person on the platform down than it will be for the other person to pull them up.
Mm-hmm.
So that, it'll
Well-
be easier for a non-Christian to pull you away from your convictions than it will be for you to lead them to Jesus.
Exactly.
And it's scriptural.
Right.
1 Corinthians 15:33. Don't be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals.
Right.
So when you think, well, I can enter into this relationship and I will bring them up
Yeah.
in your illustration. No, it's a lot easier to be pulled down. And biblically, it just tells us, listen, your good morals are going to be corrupted by bad morals if you enter into that relationship, which then goes to the 2 Corinthians 6:14. Don't team up with unbelievers. Don't be unequally yoked. And I know that people can, again, arm wrestle theologically about what that scripture really means. But in the context of this conversation and in the context of that chapter of the Bible, that's specifically what it means. That we should not enter into either a romantic dating relationship or a business relationship, unequally yoked. Because then you find a way of working against each other. And it ends up being like what you said, the one down below, it's a lot easier, to pull someone down than it is to lift someone up.
Right. I love how Paul talks about, people who have already gotten into marriages where one person is a believer and one is not a non-believer, and he kind of gives hope to that.
Yeah.
But, if you can just avoid it if you
Well, that's
can.
the thing. That's the thing. Why enter into that? Yeah,
Right.
once it happens, then of course there's a spiritual / biblical way to navigate it. But why get there?
Right.
If you have one believer and one not, then the one that is the believer should set the example for the one that's not. And I get that, and it has worked. I'm not saying it's never worked, but life is tough enough.
Yeah.
Marriage is tough enough.
Right.
Why would I want to add that element, that dynamic in there that says, man, this is going to be so much harder now because, and I had this conversation with someone yesterday. Yesterday, somebody's asked me to do a wedding, and one of the questions I ask a couple when I do premarital counseling is okay, what's your spiritual background? Where's your journey at right now? And I had one spouse that said, I believe in God, and I just, I haven't been in church lately, but I was raised in church. And the other one says, I believe that we were created, but I don't know if it was by a God.
Right. Right.
And that's what I said to him. I said, well, here's the problem. 5 years from now, when you have children, what are you going to tell them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why would you even
Yeah.
bring that kind of tension
Yeah.
into the relationship? So I think it's just crucial, for us to have that at the outset. Here's the boundaries. Here's the plan. I want to do it like Jesus wants me to do it. I want to be the kind of person that Jesus wants me to be. And at some point I want to give full disclosure. Maybe not the first date, okay, but maybe second date.
Right.
And then what do you do to be intentional about growing that relationship? Is that you're intentional
Yeah.
about growing the
Yeah.
relationship.
One of the craziest things I've ever heard, I go to a Catholic high school, is there are kids there who have parents who one is Jewish and one is Catholic. And like it's not even, and there's kids there who have parents from different denominations, but not even from different denominations, different religions. Your parents are different religions and they got married.
Yeah.
Like that is crazy to me. That is just like, and then their kids will just identify, oh, I'm both.
Yeah,
I'm Jewish and Catholic.
I know this is a conversation for another time, but
Catholic.
Yeah.
well, my spiritual godfather, one of the 4 people that I would have at that dinner you talked about last episode, Don Foley, Pentecostal guy, and married a Catholic lady, and they made it work. I don't know how. Well,
Right.
I mean, grace of God, but she would go to her mass on Saturday. He would come to church on Sunday. Vicki and I would go over, and it was a wonderful, loving home. So I don't want to project that somehow, some way. Well, if that ever happens, then you're doomed.
Right.
I mean, it can work, but I just don't understand why you'd want to have that extra tension in there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. My last question is,
Oh boy.
if there was one piece of advice that you could give to your young self while you were dating Vicki, what would it be?
I realize that today's world is a different context than what it was in the 70s. Vicki and I started dating in 1977, and we got married in 1978. And so I realize it's a different world, but I feel like the pressure today to abandon morals and to abandon convictions are stronger today than they were in the 70s. Now, maybe that's an unfair thing to say. I'm just going by how I kind of view what's going on in our world. It just seems like there's a stronger pull to move away from your convictions, your belief, your morals, than it was in my time. So I would tell myself to be better at focusing on the most important relationship, my relationship with God, which then enhances the second most important relationship, which is my relationship with my wife. Vicki and I have known each other since we were 7, 8 years old, went to the same church, raised, as Christians. I left the church for a while, Vicki stayed. And so I knew the importance of that relationship. I knew the importance of having those convictions and those beliefs. But I don't know that when we first began dating and then got engaged and then got married, I feel like, and again, it was a long time ago, Allison, so my memory may not be so good, is that I focused so much on this new family.
Right.
And we did have, we had children fairly quickly. By the time I was 23, I think, we had, Josh and Holly, and
Wow.
we're on our way to, having family. But if I could go back, I would redefine the importance of that relationship with God, because I think that would affect all the other relationships in my life in such a positive way that would have made them stronger in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it would have been a good thing. So I would just encourage anybody entering into any kind of a relationship, it's a romantic relationship, seek God, keep God number one. He's got to be number one in your life. And I think that the result of that, or the effect of that is that it enhances all those other relationships that we have.
Right. There's this saying that I've heard, I want someone who loves Jesus more than they love me. And I think that, to somebody who's not a Christian, that sounds crazy, valuing Jesus above your spouse or, partner or whatever, but it's true,
Yeah, absolutely true.
Well, and it does sound crazy to somebody who doesn't know what the love of Christ is like, who's
Right.
never experienced that in their life.
Or has the wrong perspective of the love
Exactly.
of Christ.
Yes.
That if we keep him number one, man, other things do go a lot easier. But some people have been in environments and raised in circumstances where that was not the picture of Jesus they got. But in the end, the truth is, you go to the Word, you find out who Jesus was, you enter into that relationship, and it does make all the rest of those relationships, romantic and otherwise, family relationships, social relationships, what we're dealing with in our world right now. I mean, for people to understand and know Jesus and His love, it sure makes it easier for us to navigate some of the waters that we're even going through today.
Right.
So
All right.
there you have it.
Yep. Just saying.
I'm just, you know what? We didn't say that enough this time.
No, definitely not.
I'm just saying.
This was more of a serious topic.
It
It wasn't as
Right.
light as the first episode.
Yeah. Well,
But that's
maybe,
okay.
maybe we'll lighten it up next time. Who knows?
next time we're talking about drugs.
Oh
and
my
sex.
goodness.
Maybe not.
Maybe, okay, in 3 weeks we'll lighten it up.
Maybe we'll put out a bonus episode. Just
A blooper reel.
Yeah, spice things up a little. But yeah, that was a great conversation.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Thank you guys for joining us. And we will see you next week.